Welcome back to our Jude Greek reading videos. In this video we're looking at verses 10 to 11. This is the fifth video in the series and we've just covered verses 8 to 9 in the last one. So let's jump right into it. Right at the very beginning we see again this demonstrative pronoun hutoi, meaning these. And remember, Jude doesn't even want to name these people. He wants to distance them rhetorically by referring to them as these people. So again, we've got these, and we have a postpositive de, and this is functioning either transitionally, perhaps contrastively, so either now or but, probably now, as a kind of transition. Now these, and then we have hasa, which comes from hasas. It's a relative pronoun, meaning as much as or as great as. And it's in the accusative case, normally hasas, and then we have hasa there for the accusative neuter, plural, so the typical alpha for the accusative plural ending. And this is as much as or as many things as, and here you have men, which is just kind of hanging there. You have, again, this kind of men, and then you're going to have a de construction down here. Now this de is not part of it. It's connecting these verses with what comes before it. And then this men de here is its own kind of construction. So on the one hand, as many things as, and then we have uk oidasin. Remember, oida by itself is the perfect active indicative, meaning to know. And then you have the sin here showing you its third plural, so oidasin. Along with uk means they do not know. So, but these, as many things as they do not know, and since hasa is in the accusative case, it's functioning as the direct object of oidasin. They do not know these things. So, as many things as they do not know, they are blaspheming. So they are blaspheming functions as the main verb, and then the direct object of blaspheming is really this entire clause here. They are blaspheming as much as they do not know. And hasa functions as the direct object of oidasin. They do not know these things, and then the entire clause functions as the direct object of blasphemusin. And again, you have another use of blasphemeo. We've seen the verbal form in the previous passage and the noun form in the previous passage. And now we see again the verbal form, blasphemusin. So Michael, the archangel, did not dare to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." But these, on the other hand, and that might be a good case for taking de here as contrastive. But these, as much as they don't know, so even things that they don't know, they are blaspheming. So stark contrast there with the archangel Michael. And then de, and on the other hand, hasa again, as many things as, and then you have phusikos, and remember that kos ending is adverbial. So that's not going to be our main verb, but it means naturally. And then you have hos, so this is going to be kind of a comparative clause, as ta alaga zoa. So remember, ta zoa means living thing, like ta zoan. It's to parse it is accusative plural neuter. So it means animal or living being, and then here it's in the accusative plural. Nominative plural, meaning living being or beasts or animals. So this is as animals, and then alaga. Remember the word logos. The word logos, we learn that as meaning word, but it really refers to reason or rationale or discourse or something like that. But in many cases, and especially in philosophy, classical Greek philosophy, it refers to reason. And right here, that's going to be the meaning of the log stem here, is reason. And then you have the a privative, meaning non-reasoning. So this would be reasonless or unreasoning animals. So this is an adjective standing in the first attributive position. Just like you have the good man, that's the first attributive position. So alaga is an attributive adjective in the first position. So this right here is its own comparative clause as reasonless animals or irrational animals. And then finally we come to a verb, epistontai. And this verb is from epistomai, and it means to know or to understand. And notice the only difference here, you have epista and epista, so that's the present active stem. And then it ends in mai, so this is a middle deponent verb. And over here, you have the middle passive ending for the third plural. Remember, my, psi, tai, methus, they, ontai. So this is the primary middle passive ending. So this is a deponent or a middle ending. And so if we go back, we're going to translate this as a middle verb, meaning to know or to understand, the same as its middle lexical form. So this means to understand or they understand. So now this whole clause, if we're going to put this all together, again, hossa acts as the direct object because it's in the accusative case, and it's going to be the direct object of the main verb, epistontai. So as much as they understand, and then physikos is an adverb modifying the main verb, as much as they understand naturally, and then another adverbial clause, this comparative clause, as irrational animals or like irrational animals. So to smooth this out, it'd be as much as they naturally, like irrational animals, understand, and then you have this en tutois phterontai. The tutois here cannot really be referring back to masculine plural unless it were referring back to the hutoi, but that wouldn't make much sense because you would need, if they were by themselves or something like that, you would need a reflexive pronoun. So tutois here is neuter plural, and it's referring back to the hassa there, the neuter plural right there. So the en here could be either in these things or among these things, with these things, but we can't really tell until we translate the verb. So the verb, phterontai, this comes from phthero, and again you can see the present active stem here, and Jude's using a lot of present tense verbs to use the imperfective aspect throughout his letter to present these actions as a process. And we know from the context, the historical context of what's going on, that this is also happening in present time, so we can make our translations kind of progressive if we'd like, and in the present tense. So they are destroying, they are knowing, those kinds of translations. So this is active in its lexical form, phthero, but then over here you have the ontai, present middle passive endings, and so this could either be middle or passive. If it were middle, it'd be something like in these things they are destroying, or destroying for themselves, whatever the middle meaning of this is. But this is just clearly passive, so they are destroyed, third plural ontai. So in these things they are destroyed. So the in here could be locative, could be temporal, could be means, and I think that this is a pretty clear meaning, a pretty clear use of means. By these things they are destroyed. So let's put this all together. What does this really mean? You have, and on the other hand, as much as they know naturally, like irrational animals, by these things they are destroyed. So what are the things they know? Well, I think, again, that this is another reference to sexual immorality, just as we've had before, the staining of the flesh. We're going to have the reference later at the end of the book to the defiling of garments as well. And we have the semantic domain of ungodliness and sexual immorality throughout the book. So I think this is a reference to the things they know naturally, like irrational beasts. I think that's referring to the sexual behavior of animals. They're irrational. That's all they know. They behave that way by instinct. They breed naturally by instinct. That's all they know. And it's by these things, like irrational beasts, that these infiltrators into the congregation are being destroyed. And so we see this natural, I think phterontai probably refers to a sort of natural result of their sin, a sort of moral result of their sin, and could perhaps denote divine judgment as well. Verse 11, we see why, why, meaning woe. So why autois? Autois there, dative plural. This ois was referring back to the hasa, so it's neuter, but the autois is referring back to the hutoi from the beginning, so it's going to be masculine. Woe, like woe to them, or so this could be dative of reference, or more likely dative of disadvantage. Woe against them, because hati here causal, because te hado to kain, the way of Cain, but this is the dative case, so we got to figure out what that is first. The way of Cain, eporeutheson. Now here you see the theta eta very clearly. You see the thon, the son third plural ending, and then you have eporeu. Now this is from poreuomai, which in the present tense is middle deponent. So poreuomai. Now here you see the augment epsilon, and then you see the theta eta, which is a clear sign of the aorist passive. So in our biblical literature, poreuomai is middle in the present tense, but when it goes into the aorist, it goes into the aorist passive. But it's still deponent. So it's middle deponent in the present tense, but passive deponent in the aorist. So this still has that active sense in English of going, or walking, or living. In this case, this is kind of a Hebrew idiom, walking in the way of Cain. So this te hado is kind of locative, walking in the way of Cain. Or it could be possibly manner, walking in the manner of Cain. So the reason, woe to them, the reason is they have gone in the way of Cain, or they've lived in the way of Cain. And te plane in the, now plane means error or wandering, or something like that. Usually, in this case, probably the error. And then we have this difficult clause. This whole thing is the dative clause here, followed by the genitive. Now here we have a curious thing. Tu and Balaam and Misthu are all genitive. Now remember, with proper names, just like with Cain here, you don't have a full declension of a lot of names. So the genitive, these are genitival forms, even though they don't look like it. There's, for each different name, you just kind of have to look up the declension, how it declines. So this is genitive, though, to Balaam Misthu. And so this could either be the error of Balaam, and then you have to deal with Misthu, which means wage or payment, or can also mean recompense. So there's different ways that the translations handle this, and some of them try to take Misthu as kind of an apposition of some sort to Balaam. So the error of Balaam, the profit or the wages. So if you remember back in the Old Testament, there are a few places, or rather, there's one place in particular that mentions the payment given to Balaam. That's in Deuteronomy 23:4, very clearly refers to the wages that he was paid by Balak to curse Israel. So this misthu could refer to his wages that he was paid, but it can also have the sense of recompense. And if you remember, back in Joshua 13:22, it refers to Balaam being killed in war by Israel. And that seems to be taken as a sign of judgment in the Old Testament, that Balaam was killed in war. And in that sense, you could say that he was given a recompense for whatever was considered his wrongdoing. And remember, this is back in Numbers. You can go back and read the whole story to see that. And then, but Balaam is referred to in Deuteronomy and in Joshua and further on throughout the Old Testament, and then in the New Testament a couple times in some interesting ways, especially in Revelation. So right here we have, we could take this as the way of Balaam and then deal with misthu as meaning either wages or recompense. Or what I think is a better option is to take tu as going with misthu. So the error of the wages or the recompense, and then Balaam is kind of a fronted genitive that is modifying misthu. And I actually, I can actually support that a little bit by pointing to our passage right back here, where we have peri to somatos mouseos, where the tu goes with the genitive somatos, and then the genitival name there is actually modifying somatos, so it's a fronted genitive. And I think that's probably what's going on back here in Jude 10 and Jude 11, is that we have the error of the recompense of Balaam. And so now we have to classify Balaam as a type of genitive. Now, I'm going to take misthu as recompense because he has that sort of, he was judged in the Old Testament with his death, and that can be a meaning of recompense. And I think it makes good sense here. If you take recompense as a verbal noun, and that means that it has a verbal kind of meaning to it, somebody has to give recompense to somebody else, then you could take Balaam as an objective genitive, meaning Balaam is the object of the recompense. He is the one given recompense, so God gives recompense to him. So he is the object of the verbal action inherent within misthu. So Balaam is an objective genitive. And misthu would just be a genitive of description, describing what type of error is being referred to. So woe to these, because they have gone in the way of Cain, and in the error of the recompense of Balaam. And then we have the verb of this clause, exegetical. This one's a little difficult to parse, but you do have the theta eta, which helps you out. If we go to the parsing sheet, you can see this is from ekeo, meaning to pour out. And so you can still see the key there. This is kind of an odd morphological word. You can look it up in BDAG to see a little bit on its morphology. But this is the aorist passive form. Ekekutheson. You can see the third plural. You can see the aorist passive. And we see it's from this verb meaning to pour out. So the passive here would be they were poured out. So in the error of the recompense of Balaam, they were poured out. Or metaphorically, this verb here means they devoted themselves. So they devoted themselves, and then te plane would be modifying the main verb. They devoted themselves. What did they devote themselves to? To the error of the recompense of Balaam. And possibly even missed through here could be a genitive of result. There's that category in Wallace that refers to a genitive of goal or destiny. That's I mean, that's kind of a rare category according to Wallace, and he only has a few examples. So it's, he calls it the genitive destination, I believe. It's not a incredibly likely candidate, but it could be the error leading to the recompense of Balaam, and they devoted themselves to this same error of Balaam. So I think that's the best way to handle that difficult clause. Then you have this last chi, and then you have, again, the kind of fronted dative. So you have three fronted datives here, followed by a genitive of a name. Maybe I can actually clear this up and show that more clearly, because this really is very intentionally written and balanced here. You see, let me highlight the names. You have these genitival names, and right before that you have these datives. And following that, you have these verbs. Sorry, not that one, but this one and that one. So this is a very balanced verse right here. So, te antologia to Kore, that's of Korah from the Old Testament, and then apollanto. So, let's deal first with the verb apollanto, and then we'll deal with the dative. Apollanto is from apollume, and apollume has an interesting morphology as well. This is its lexical form. This is simply the aorist middle form, and you can see that if you look this up in BDAG, it says that this is the first aorist form, apolysa. So you see that the omicron is lengthened to an omega, and then it's only got one lambda, and then it's got the sigma alpha for the kind of first aorist form. Now, when you come over here to apollanto, the onto, remember, is the secondary passive, main so to, metas de onto. That's the secondary middle passive ending. And if this were aorist passive, it would have a theta eta, so this must be middle. So this is aorist middle indicative, third person plural. And you can see the aorist stem, apol, just like over here you have apol. That's the aorist active, or just the aorist active and middle stem. So interestingly though, this also in the Attic period had this form. It was actually an omega ending verb in the Attic period, apollo, and that form actually still occurs one time in Paul's letters. It occurs in 1 Corinthians 1:19. So if you want to see this older form of apollume, you can go back and look at 1 Corinthians 1:19 and see Paul's use of it. So in this case, it's middle. It's a middle form, and so here it means to be destroyed, or just to be destroyed, or actually destroy would be more of an active meaning. The middle meaning in this, according to BDAG, is something more like perish. So destroy has an active meaning, but perish is that kind of middle meaning, because with perishing, the agent is a little more of a participant in the actual destroying process, destroying oneself. So it's almost kind of a reflexive idea, but perishing would be a better translation here. So let's go back and finish the passage here. They're perishing in the something, the antologia of Korah. Now, antologia, just take the subscript off there. You'll have the lexical form. Antologia can mean dispute or contradiction, or it can also mean hostility or rebellion. Now, in the Old Testament, this word is actually used to refer to, for example, Israel's testing of God at Meribah with the deal with the water and the rock. So you can see this in Numbers 20:13, for example. In the Septuagint, you can see it in Numbers 27:14. So it's referring to Israel testing them. almost kind of hostility or rebellion in that sense. It's used throughout the Psalms to refer to contention or strife with enemies. And then when you get to the New Testament, it only occurs 3 other times, all 3 in Hebrews. So once at least to mean kind of dispute, can't be argued, is the way it's used. And then in another case, it's referred to hostility at the beginning of chapter 12, verse 3, I believe. So in this case, since it's referring to Korah, the translations pretty unanimously translate it as rebellion, and I think rightly so. It's referring to Korah's rebellion, and so it falls in line with that use, like the mention of Israel's testing of God at Meribah when they rebelled against him. So in the rebellion of Korah, they perished, is how you would translate this. So a nice balanced verse 11 with 3 reasons that they are woed upon. So going to the final translation, let's see what this looks like. Let me zoom out a little. Okay. So hutoi, but these, in contrast to Michael up there, but these are blaspheming as much as they do not know, and as much as they understand naturally, like reasonless beasts or irrational animals. By these things they are destroyed. Woe to them, because they have gone in the way of Cain, and in the error of the recompense of Balaam they have devoted themselves. The themselves there is kind of implied. They've been poured out is how it would be literally. So they've been poured out, or they've devoted themselves. And in the rebellion of Korah, they have perished. So interestingly, back in verses 5 to 7, you had the 3 OT examples of rebellion. And now here, you have another threefold list, very balanced construction of the errors in which these infiltrators are rebelling against God's order, against God's authority. And especially, remember, these are, Cain, Balaam, Korah, these are major rebellions against God's order and his authority. So that's it for verse 11. If you'll join us next time, we'll continue on in the next video. Thanks a lot.